4.33. What happens to a criminal? The crime. 1,
Carl and Adam committed a crime. They robbed a large supermarket.
2,
The police investigated the crime.
3,
Carl and Adam were caught driving to the airport in a stolen car.
4,
They were arrested and taken to a police station.
5,
The police questioned them for 10 hours.
6,
Finally, they were charged with armed robbery.
the trial. 7,
2 months later, Carl and Adam appeared in court.
8,
They were accused of armed robbery and car theft.
9,
Witnesses told the court what they had seen or knew.
10,
The jury, of 12 people, looked at and heard all the evidence.
11,
After 2 days, the jury reached their verdict.
12,
Carl was found guilty. His fingerprints were on the gun used in the robbery.
13,
The judge decided what Carl's punishment should be.
14,
He sentenced him to 10 years in prison.
15,
There was no proof that Adam had committed the crime.
16,
He was acquitted and allowed to go free.
4.34.
Drugs. Judge. Mugger. Punishment. Smuggling.
Burglar. Murderer.
Caught. Court. Fraud.
Accuse.
Jury.
4.35.
And last on our crime news stories from around the world, a burglar who's been fooling even the most intelligent students. The area near Broadway and 9th Street in New York City is where students often head to when they're looking for an apartment to share. This was something well known to Daniel Stewart Cooper, who also knew that students in a shared house often go out and leave the door unlocked, maybe thinking that another roommate is still inside. This situation suited Cooper perfectly, and he is thought to have committed between 50 and 100 burglaries in the area. It is believed that he was mainly interested in finding illegal substances, but that if he found electronics or other gadgets lying around, he took those too. And he didn't just steal things. Cooper is also said to have made himself at home in the houses, helping himself to food from the refrigerator and even taking a shower. Although he usually tried to make sure that the residents were out, if he did meet people, it's thought that he would pretend to know someone there, and so was able to leave without raising suspicions. However, on September 5th, Cooper was finally caught, after 2 students saw him in the area with a laptop and a backpack that he had just stolen from their house. Dylan John, one of the victims, told CBS News that Cooper had taken some food too. Cooper, who ran off as soon as he realized that the students suspected him, was found by the police hiding behind some nearby bushes.
(4.36).
Simple present. Murderers are usually sentenced to life imprisonment.
Present continuous. The trial is being held right now.
Present perfect. My car has been stolen.
Simple past. Jim was arrested last month.
Past continuous. The theater was being rebuilt when it was set on fire.
Past perfect. We saw that one of the windows had been broken.
Future. The prisoner will be released next month. The verdict is going to be given tomorrow.
Infinitive. People used to be imprisoned for stealing bread.
Base form. You can be fined for parking at a bus stop.
Gerund. He paid a fine to avoid being sent to jail.
4.37. 1.
They say that the fire was started deliberately.
It is said that the fire was started deliberately.
People think that the mayor will resign.
It is thought that the mayor will resign.
2.
People say the man is in his 40s.
The man is said to be in his 40s.
The police believe he has left the country.
He is believed to have left the country.
4.38.
And for our last story today, have you ever wondered what it would be like to be eaten by a tiger? Well, now we know, thanks to Sundari, a 7-year-old Siberian tiger living at Longleat Safari Park. Last week, when it snowed, the zookeepers decided to build some snowmen to entertain the tigers, and they hid a tiny video camera inside one of the snowmen to video the tigers' reactions. At first, the tigers just sniffed at the snowman, but then one of them, named Sundari, began attacking the snowman and started to eat it and the camera. However, she didn't like the taste of the camera, so after a while she spat it out. Amazingly, the camera hadn't stopped recording and was still working when the zookeepers recovered it. The video that the hidden camera had taken was incredible. For the first time, you could feel what it would be like to be attacked by a tiger and see its open mouth coming at you and see its enormous razor-sharp teeth and its rough tongue. In fact, a spokesman for the safari park said that the shots of Sundari's teeth were so clear that it gave them the chance to do a quick health check on her mouth, gums, and teeth.
4.39. 1.
Jack offered to drive me to the airport.
I promise not to tell anybody.
2.
The doctor advised me to rest.
I persuaded my sister not to go out with Max.
3.
I apologized for being so late.
The police accused Carl of stealing the car.
4.40.
Accuse.
Admit.
Advise.
Agree.
Convince.
Deny.
Insist.
Invite.
Offer.
Order.
Persuade.
Promise.
Refuse.
Regret.
Remind.
Suggest.
Threaten.
4.41. 1.
He offered to make some coffee.
2.
He refused to go.
3.
He agreed to help me.
4.
He promised to call me.
5.
He reminded me to lock the door.
6.
He advised me to buy a new car.
7.
He invited me to have dinner.
8,
He denied breaking the window.
9,
He admitted stealing the money.
10,
He regretted marrying Susan.
11,
He suggested going to a dance club.
12,
The police accused him of stealing the laptop.
4.42. 1,
I didn't break the window.
He denied breaking the window.
2,
I wish I hadn't married Susan.
He regretted marrying Susan.
3,
I'll call you, believe me.
He promised to call me.
4,
Let's go to a dance club.
He suggested going to a dance club.
5,
You stole the laptop.
The police accused him of stealing the laptop.
6,
No, I won't go.
He refused to go.
7,
Okay, I'll help you.
He agreed to help me.
8,
Remember to lock the door.
He reminded me to lock the door.
9,
I'll make some coffee.
He offered to make some coffee.
10,
Would you like to have dinner?
He invited me to have dinner.
11,
Yes, it was me. I stole the money.
He admitted stealing the money.
12,
You should buy a new car.
He advised me to buy a new car.
4.43. Journalists and people in the media. 1,
Critic.
2,
Sports commentator.
3,
Reporter.
4,
Editor.
5,
News anchor.
6,
Freelance journalist.
7,
Newscaster.
8,
Paparazzi.
9,
Advice columnist.
4.44. Adjectives to describe the media. 1, D,
The reporting in the paper was very sensational.
2, E,
The news on Channel 12 is really biased.
3, B,
I think the New York Times is the most objective of the Sunday papers.
4, A,
The movie review was very accurate.
5, C,
I think the report was censored.
4.45. The language of headlines. 1, A,
Famous actress in restaurant Bill spat.
2, E.
Team manager to quit after shocking defeat.
3. G.
Prince to wed 18-year-old TV soap star.
4. L.
President backs senator in latest scandal.
5. I.
Tarantino tabbed to direct new thriller.
6. B.
Thousands of jobs axed by U.S. companies.
7. K.
Stock market hit by oil fears.
8. C.
Police quiz witness in murder trial.
9. D.
Astronaut bids to be first man on Mars.
10. J.
Politicians clash over new car tax proposal.
11. H.
Tennis star vows to avenge defeat.
12. F.
Actor and wife split over affair with cleaner.
4.46.
Brad Pitt said recently, "They call my kids by their names. They shove cameras in their faces. I really believe there should be a law against it." He was talking, of course, about paparazzi. But are the paparazzi really as bad as Brad Pitt says they are? Today in the studio with me is Jennifer Boole, who is an actual, is it paparazzi or paparazzo?
Paparazzo for a man, paparazza for a woman. Paparazzi is the plural.
So, Jennifer, are you good, bad, or in between?
Well, I think I'm a good girl, but some people would probably not like me.
A lot of people say there's a working relationship between celebrities and paparazzi. Would you say that was true? That celebrities actually tell you where they're going to be?
Yes, of course. That happens all the time. But I think that's what a lot of the public doesn't realize. You know, people shout at us and insult us when there's a big crowd of us around. Let's say Britney Spears or Lindsay Lohan. I just want to tell them that they called us. After we've sold the photos, we split the money between the stars and us.
I've often thought that must be true. I mean, nobody just goes to the gym with their hair done and makeup on unless they're actually expecting to be photographed.
Exactly. But don't get me wrong. It's not like all the celebrities want to be photographed. If a celebrity wants to go out and avoid the paparazzi, it's pretty easy to do. Celebrities that don't like it rarely get photographed. They very rarely get photographed.
Give me some examples of celebrities who genuinely don't want to be photographed. Like, who really hates it?
Julia Roberts hates it. Kate Bosworth hates it.
Are photos of them worth more money if they hate it?
It depends. No, not necessarily. Because they don't get photographed often, then nobody sees them in magazines, and they lose interest in them because they become boring.
What shot have you taken that you got the most money for?
Probably one of the shots that sold the best that I didn't expect, didn't even know, was Paris Hilton carrying the Bible right before she went to jail. There were lots of paparazzi there, but I was the only one that got the Bible.
Do you think we need stricter laws to keep paparazzi away?
There are already enough laws. We don't need more laws or anti-paparazzi laws or anything else. There are places where celebrities can go to where they know they won't be followed, and places where they know they will be.
For example?
We don't go into restaurants, we don't go into stores, and of course we don't go into people's homes. That's private property. But a beach or a park isn't.
So you don't think that being followed and photographed by the paparazzi is really stressful for celebrities?
I think there are only a few people for whom it's really and truly stressful. I'd say that in most cases, the star not only doesn't mind, but has actually told the paparazzi, "This is where I'm going to be this afternoon."
Fascinating. Thank you very much for coming into the studio. Jennifer Bull, everybody.
.48. A short film on the speed of news.
Hi, my name's Matt Wilder. I'm a freelance journalist based in Washington, D.C. At the moment, I'm trying to find a good story. I have a 6 o'clock deadline, but nothing's going on. I know. I'll see what topics are trending on Twitter. Today, we live in the era of new media. People can access the news at any time, from any place, on all kinds of digital devices. The internet and social media sites, such as Twitter and Facebook, allow these news consumers to become news producers. If you want to be a journalist, all you have to do is post an article online, and it can be read instantly by anyone, anywhere in the world. Journalism has changed a lot during the first days of the newspaper, and most of these changes have been driven by technology. There's no better place to discover this than Washington, D.C., home of the Newseum. There are over 30,000 newspapers here, covering over 500 years of news. This is the Boston Newsletter, thought to be the first continuously published newspaper in North America.
This edition, from 1718, reports on the sensational killing of Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, believed to be one of the most dangerous pirates at the time.
Reporting in the early days of journalism must have been very difficult. Journalists would ride their horses to the nearest town that had a printing press. Their reports were then published in a newspaper, which is often just a single sheet of paper, and distributed on horseback.
The roads were bad, so it was very difficult to send news over long distances. By the time most people read these newspapers, the news was often very out of date.
This all changed when the first telegraph line was built in 1844. Suddenly, journalists could send stories quickly. The telegraph is said to have revolutionized news reporting. This new style of journalism came just in time for the American Civil War.
For the first time, news could be sent at the same time as battles were being fought. War correspondents, and the stories they sent, became very popular. But there were still problems. These war reports were very biased because journalists represented their own side in the war. There was no objectivity, and reports were usually censored by the army or the government. So stories were often inaccurate, and sometimes completely wrong.
It wasn't until the invention of radio and television that news could be broadcast live. This completely transformed news and created the age of the mass media, where news could be communicated to a huge audience.
Throughout the 20th century, demand for news stories increased, and news technology continued to advance. By the end of the century, there were hundreds of cable TV channels, lots of 24-hour news channels, and the internet had been invented. Suddenly, we were in the information age.
This is the HP New Media Gallery. It shows the news as it is today. Visitors to this exhibit are placed right at the center of the digital news revolution.
They are instantly connected to the day's news by live Twitter feeds, showing the day's trending news stories. They can also check out major news stories which were first reported on social media. These pictures of a plane landing on New York's Hudson River were taken on a smartphone and uploaded to Twitter seconds after the incident had occurred.
Speaking of smartphones. Oh, fantastic. A tweet from the White House. Oh, there's a big announcement in 25 minutes. I better go. Bye.
.2.
The first point to bear in mind is that nothing, I repeat, nothing, is ever free. How often have you seen ads saying things like, "Get a free MP3 player when you subscribe to our magazine for 6 months"? There's something about the word free that immediately attracts us. I want it. It makes us feel smart, as if we're going to get something for nothing. But of course, that MP3 player, which incidentally will probably break the second time you use it, wasn't free at all. In spite of what the ad said, its price was really included in the magazine subscription, so don't trust any ad that offers something for free. A second trick that advertisers use is when they tell us, "There are only a few left. Buy now while the stock lasts." What happens to us when we read or hear these words? Even though we don't really need the products, and maybe don't even like them, we immediately want to be among the lucky few who have them. But let's be clear about this. Companies just don't run out of products. Do you really think the manufacturers couldn't produce a few more if they thought they could sell them? Of course they could. When it comes to new products, we, the consumers, are like sheep, and we follow each other. So another way advertisers get us to use something is to tell us everybody's using it. And of course, we think everybody can't be wrong, so the product must be fantastic. So as to make us believe it, they use expressions like, "It's a must-have," or "It's the in thing." And they combine this with a photograph of a large group of people so that we can't fail to get the message. But don't be fooled. Even if everybody is using it, and they may not be, everybody can be wrong. Another favorite message is, "You too can look like this," accompanied by a photo of a fabulous-looking man or woman. But the problem is, you can't look like this because actually the woman or man in the photo is a model, and also because he or she doesn't really look like that either. The photo has been airbrushed in order to make the model look even slimmer, with perfect skin, and even more attractive than they are in real life. Finally, what most annoys me is, "Trust me, I'm a doctor," or "Trust me, I'm a celebrity." The idea is that if a celebrity is using the product, it must be fantastic, or if a doctor recommends it, it must really work. But be careful. Although the actress is holding the product in the photo, do you really think she colors her hair with it at home? And the doctor in the ad, is he really a doctor or just an actor wearing a white coat? Ads also often mention a particular organization that recommends their product. For example, things like, "Our dog biscuits are recommended by the International Association of Dog Nutritionists." Well, that's probably an organization that the company set up themselves. Or, "A recent independent study found that our toothpaste cleans your teeth better than any other brand." What study was it? Who commissioned the study? It was probably produced for the company itself and paid for by them too.
5.3. 1.
In spite of what the ad said, its price was really included in the magazine subscription.
2.
Even though we don't really need the products, and maybe don't even like them, we immediately want to be among the lucky few who have them.
3.
So as to make us believe it, they use expressions like, "It's a must-have,"
4.
and they combine this with a photograph of a large group of people so that we can't fail to get the message.
5.
The photo has been airbrushed in order to make the model look even slimmer, with perfect skin, and even more attractive than they are in real life.
6.
Although the actress is holding the product in the photo, do you really think she colors her hair with it at home?
7.
It was probably produced for the company itself and paid for by them too.
5.4. 1.
Although the ad said it would last for years, mine broke after 2 months.
I went to work even though I wasn't feeling very well.
I like Anne, though she sometimes annoys me.
2.
In spite of her age, she is still very active. Despite her age, she is still very active.
In spite of being 85, she is still very active. Despite being 85, she is still very active.
In spite of the fact that she's 85, she is still very active. Despite the fact that she's 85, she is still very active.
5.5. 1.
I went to the bank to talk to the bank manager. I went to the bank in order to talk to the bank manager. I went to the bank so as to talk to the bank manager.
2.
I went to the bank for a meeting with the bank manager.
3.
I went to the bank so that I could talk to the manager in person.
4.
I wrote down what he said so as not to forget it.
5.6.
When Paul Feldman started his business, he really thought that at least 95% of the people would pay for their bagels. This was presumably because that was the payment rate that he got in his own office. But, in fact, this rate wasn't representative at all. I mean, in his office, most people paid probably just because Feldman worked there himself, and they knew him personally, and probably liked him. So, when Feldman sold his bagels in other offices, he had to accept less. After a while, he considered that a company was honest if over 90% of the people paid. Between 80 and 90% was what he considered to be normal, the average rate. He didn't like it, but he had to accept it. It was only if a company habitually paid less than 80%, which luckily not many did, that he would feel he had to do something. First, he would leave a note, sort of giving them a warning, and then, if things didn't improve, he would simply stop selling there. Interestingly, since he started the business, the boxes he leaves to collect the cash have hardly ever been stolen. Obviously, in the mind of an office worker, to steal a bagel isn't a crime, but to steal the money box is. So, what does the bagel data tell us about the kind of offices that were not honest, the ones that didn't pay? Well, first of all, it shows that smaller offices are more honest than big ones. An office with 20 to 30 employees generally pays 3 to 5% more than an office with 200 to 300 employees. This seems to be because in a smaller community, people are more worried about being dishonest, probably because they would feel worse if they were caught. The bagel data also suggests that your mood, how you feel, affects how honest you are. For example, the weather is a really important factor. When the weather is unusually good, more people pay. But if it's unusually cold or rainy, fewer people pay. And people are also affected by holidays, but in different ways. It depends which holiday. Before Christmas and Thanksgiving, people are less honest. But just before the 4th of July and Labor Day, they are more honest. This seems to be because holidays, like the 4th of July, are just a day off work, and people always look forward to them. But Christmas and Thanksgiving are holidays where people very often feel stressed or miserable, so their bad mood makes them less honest. The other thing Feldman believes affects how honest people are is the morale in an office. When employees like their boss and like their job, then the office is more honest. He also thinks that the higher people are promoted, the less honest they are. He reached this conclusion because, over several years, he'd been delivering 3 baskets of bagels to a company that was on 3 floors. The top floor was the executive floor, and the lower 2 floors were people who worked in sales and service and administrative employees. Well, it turned out that the least honest floor was the executive floor. It makes you wonder whether maybe these guys got to be executives because they were good at cheating. But in general, the story of Feldman's bagel business is a really positive one. It's true that some people do steal from him, but the vast majority, even though no one is watching them, are honest.
5.7. Verbs and expressions. A. 1.
Manufactured.
2.
Launched.
3.
Merged.
4.
Market.
5.
Produced. Exported.
6.
Took over.
7.
Became.
8.
Expanded.
9.
Set up.
10.
Imported.
11.
Grows.
12.
Close down. Drop.
5.8. Verbs and expressions. C.
Do business with.
Do a job.
Do market research.
Do well. Do badly.
Make a deal.
Make a decision.
Make an investment.
Make a loss.
Make money.
5.9 Organizations and People. A. 1,
A chain.
2,
A business.
3,
A multinational.
4,
Headquarters.
5,
A branch.
B. 1,
The staff.
2,
A customer.
3,
A client.
4,
A colleague.
5,
The CEO.
6,
The owner.
7,
A manager.
5.10 1,
We're making good progress with the report.
2,
The new building is progressing well.
3,
We export to customers all over the world.
4,
One of our main exports is cheese.
5,
Can you refund me the cost of my ticket?
Sorry, we don't give refunds.
6,
Sales have increased by 10% this month, so there has been an increase in profits.
7,
The demand for organic produce has grown enormously.
8,
Most toys nowadays are produced in China.
9,
Half the applicants for the job were rejected.
10,
Rejects are sold at a reduced price.
5.12 Prefixes and suffixes that add meaning. A. 1, G.
Overcrowded.
2, C. Megacities. 3, D.
Underdeveloped.
4, B. Multicultural. 5, J.
Subway.
6, H. Bilingual. 7, E.
Monorail.
8, F. Autopilot. 9, A.
Antisocial.
10, K. Misunderstood. 11, I.
Postgraduate.
5.13 C. 1, D. Homeless. Hopeless. 2, A.
Careful. Useful.
3, C. Bulletproof. Waterproof. 4, B.
Unbreakable. Drinkable.
5.14 Nouns formed with suffixes.
Intention. Pollution. Population. Reduction.
Entertainment. excitement, government, improvement,
coldness, friendliness, ugliness, weakness,
absence, convenience, distance, ignorance,
racism, terrorism,
brotherhood, childhood.
5.15 Nouns which are different words. 1,
Lose. Loss.
2,
Die. Death.
3,
Succeed. Success.
4,
Think. Thought.
5,
Believe. Belief.
6,
Hot. Heat.
7,
Strong. Strength.
8,
Hungry. Hunger.
9,
High. Height.
10,
Long. Length.
5.16
Accommodation.
Antisocial.
Bilingual.
Entertainment.
Government.
Homeless.
Loneliness.
Multicultural.
Neighborhood.
Overcrowded.
Poverty.
Underdeveloped.
Unemployment.
Vandalism.
5.17
So, Miles, you're going to tell us about your top 5 cities.
Yes, it was a difficult question for me because, of course, as a travel writer, I've been to so many places. But in the end, I decided that if I was making a personal choice, they had to be cities that meant something to me personally, that had a personal connection. So these aren't necessarily big tourist cities, though some of them are, but the cities that are my own personal top 5. Incidentally, these 5 aren't in any particular order.
So what's the first one in your top 5?
Well, the first one is Sydney. The personal connection is that my son and his family live there, so of course my wife and I have been there quite often and got to know it well. Of course, there are lots of amazing things about Sydney. For one thing, it's a waterfront city. It has the sea all around it. There's wonderful surfing on Bondi Beach and plenty of great little bays for sunbathing and swimming. It's also a very cosmopolitan city. Sydney-siders, which is what people from Sydney are called, come from all corners of the world. So, for example, the choice of places to eat is endless. You can find everything from simple soup kitchens to elegant, world-class restaurants. So you can choose to eat Thai, Vietnamese, Greek, Italian, and many, many other kinds of cuisine.
And your second city?
My wife and I spent our honeymoon in Edinburgh, so it's always been a special place for me, but I think it's especially exciting during the festival, which happens every August. Of course, there's a fantastic programme of music and dance and the arts, but what gives the city a special buzz during the festival is the Fringe. The Fringe is a massive alternative festival, and it has literally hundreds of events: comedy, theatre, amateur student groups, street entertainers, and of course the pubs stay open until much later than usual during the festival, and that adds to the atmosphere too. However, it's really hard to get accommodation during the festival, so you need to book well in advance.
I must say I've never been to the festival, though I've often thought about going. Next year I really have to get there. What about your third city?
My third city is Cairo. We lived there for 5 years in the 70s, and both our sons were born there, beside the River Nile. People always associate Cairo with the pyramids, and of course, they are amazing, but for me, the best thing about it is the museums, which are absolutely fantastic. The Egyptian Museum has the world's largest and best collection from pharaonic times. Then the Coptic Museum, which is in the suburb of Al-Fastat, has the best of Egypt's Christian culture. And the Museum of Islamic Art has a whole lot of exquisite pieces from Muslim times. So, if you're someone who likes museums and antiquities, my advice is go to Cairo.
Oh, I have been to Cairo, and I completely agree with you. And your next one?
For my next one, we're back in Europe, in Italy. I've chosen Lucca in Tuscany. Tuscany's two major tourist towns, Florence and Pisa, are absolutely jam-packed with tourists all year round, but most of them never get to Lucca. You can only really explore it on foot, which is the way I like to move around a town, and in about an hour you can do the 4-kilometre circuit all around its Renaissance town walls. These walls are amazing. They're completely intact, and you can peer into people's living rooms as you walk past. Or you can walk from one end of the town to the other along the Via Filungo. Also, Lucca is the birthplace of Puccini, who's one of my all-time favourite composers. He played the organ of the town's magnificent cathedral when he was a young man, and there's a wonderful open-air festival every year where they perform his operas at a place called Torre del Lago, which is just nearby.
And your last city?
My last city is one that not many people have been to. It's not on the usual tourist route. I'd just finished university and I was curious about the wider world, so I went to Laos in Southeast Asia. Laos and its capital, Vientiane, were my first experience of living and working outside Western Europe. The Laotians are a lovely, gentle, laid-back people. They taught me to relax. And they showed me how it's quite possible to be happy with very little money. The scenery is spectacular too. The impressive Mekong River flows far away over the sands in the dry season and speeds by the city like a wide, rushing torrent once the rainy season begins. I remember looking down on it from one of the restaurants along its banks and feeling that it was sweeping away all my troubles.
5.18. 1.
There's wonderful surfing on Bondi Beach and plenty of great little bays for sunbathing and swimming.
2.
The choice of places to eat is endless.
3.
But what gives the city a special buzz during the festival is the fringe.
4.
And the Museum of Islamic Art has a whole lot of exquisite pieces from Muslim times.
5.
Tuscany's two major tourist towns, Florence and Pisa, are absolutely jam-packed with tourists all year round.
6.
These walls are amazing. They're completely intact, and you can peer into people's living rooms as you walk past.
7.
The Laotians are a lovely, gentle, laid-back people.
8.
I remember looking down on it from one of the restaurants along its banks and feeling that it was sweeping away all my troubles.
5.19. 1.
The weather is fantastic there, and there's very little traffic, so you can walk everywhere.
The scenery is beautiful here, but it's spoiled by all the trash people leave.
2.
Could you give me some advice about where to stay?
One useful piece of advice is to get a Metro card.
3.
The new opera house is made mainly of glass.
Can I have a glass of water, please?
5.20. 1.
One of the best museums is on the outskirts of the city.
My clothes are filthy. I'll put on some clean pants. I'll put on a pair of clean pants.
2. The hotel staff is very efficient.
The cabin crew is coming around with the snack cart in just a few minutes.
5.21 Interview with an advertising executive. Part 1.
What first drew you to advertising as a career choice?
What drew me to advertising was actually, in a weird way, I had no choice. Third generation advertising guy. My father's brother, my uncle, who was 15 years older than he, was in advertising, believe it or not, in the 1940s in Philadelphia. My father kind of took the baton from him, was in advertising, and I grew up with it. And so I've been making a living in the business since 1984. It's a long time. It's 30 years.
Do you still remember any commercials from your childhood?
So I remember a lot of commercials. Growing up in an advertising household, as we did, TV was more of a social event in those days. It wasn't a TV in every room. Like, the family would gather to watch television. And we were told not to talk, during the commercials. We could talk during the shows. So I grew up kind of watching commercials. I remember a lot of commercials. I bet you most people of my generation would remember a lot of, and I feel kind of guilty saying this because they're usually decried as not very creative, but you remember a lot of jingles.
What do you think makes jingles memorable?
Among purists in the field, jingles are, laughed at, scoffed at, but God, you remember them. What do they call them? Earworms. They get in your head and you can't get them out sometimes. And you add that to, almost everyday exposure, 6 times a day. It's going to get in there. I can do, I could sing one for you. There was a kid's hot cereal for children called H.O. Farina. And it was an animated cartoon. It was very rudimentary. If you saw it today, you wouldn't believe it was like a national broadcast cartoon. And it was a little story of Willie and Wilhelmina. And Willie trips on a rock. And he goes, every day I trip over that rock, Wilhelmina. And she says, move it, Willie. And he says, can't, too big. And I bet you I'm getting this word for word, if you could find it. And she says, I will. And he says, you're a girl. And she picks it up. And then the jingle comes up and it goes, strong Wilhelmina eats her farina. Like I said, I probably heard that 500 times, maybe more when I was growing up, because it was every weekend for about 8 years.
5.22 Interview with an advertising executive. Part 2.
What elements of a commercial are the most important?
To me, a commercial basically is built in 3 parts. If you think of it as a pyramid, the top part of the pyramid, I would say, is impact. I have to intrude upon your life, because you're probably working on your computer while you're watching TV, or you're doing something. And when I talk about a TV commercial, it's the same for a web ad or an app. So you have to get impact. You have to intrude. You have to kind of knock on the door. The second thing is communication. What do you want the person to know? And that needs to be clear and precise. And the third thing is the hardest. It's persuasion, because you're running a commercial to get people to do something. So it's that amalgamation. Another way of talking about it, and this is old school, but there's a acronym that probably comes from the Mad Men era called AIDA, like the opera. Attention, interest, desire, action.
How do you feel about using celebrities to sell things?
Sometimes using a celebrity is a shortcut to intrusion, because people pay attention to celebrities. Hopefully, it's a celebrity that has some bearing on the brand. That I don't think if I was working on a depilatory, I'd want to use Tommy Lee Jones, but that would just be gross. But you find the right person, they can have special special meaning, I think. And we do live in a celebrity culture, and people, you know, their ears perk up when they see a celebrity. So if you go back to that pyramid I drew, it's a way of getting impact. I'm not a giant fan of it, but sometimes you do things you're not a giant fan of.
On your website, you say, I can make people laugh. How important is humour in advertising?
I tend not to be funny in TV commercials. I'm just partly because I'm kind of a cerebral guy, and I wind up having to use that more than humor. But I think humor is incredibly important in the business, and a lot of the commercials that really resonate with people, I think, are funny. A lot of movies, a lot of everything, you know.
5.23 Interview with an advertising executive. Part 3.
With all the technology, viral advertising, etc., do you think billboards and TV commercials have had their day?
Have billboards and TV commercials had their day? You know what? I don't think so. I mean, I can tell you empirically, I can tell you rationally, that 75% of all media dollars is spent on broadcast. And I know it's like courant to say, I don't have a TV, or I never watch TV, but people do. The fact is, TV viewership is at an all-time high. So I don't think TV is dead. And I don't think billboards will be, you know, something as kind of passé as a billboard will be dead as long as, like, the highways are crowded, because you got a captive audience. And until we can kind of pixelize ourselves and beam ourselves to work, I think there'll be billboards. I mean, they can be effective.
As a consumer, and obviously as an advertiser, does advertising influence the decisions you make?
Yeah, you know, I'm very susceptible to advertising. I think because I tend to notice it. You know, I think I'm very sensitive to. I think I'm very sensitive to stuff that isn't true. But when I see something that's well crafted and appeals, I think, to both my head and my heart, you know, I think I register those things.
Is there an existing advertising campaign you wish you'd come up with? And why do you think it is so effective?
Is there an existing advertising campaign? Yeah, that I wish I did. There's a few. I think the stuff that is being done for Nike, just in general, for 30 years has been exemplary. You know, they tapped into a mindset, and they made everyone feel like they were athletic, and they became kind of the gold standard, and they rarely hit a false note. Same thing with Apple, though people are distressed in the industry about the latest direction Apple's been taking, which seems less sincere.
Why do you think the Apple campaign is so effective?
You know, Apple took, I think Apple is effective because they looked at an industry and they said, here's what's wrong with the industry. And everything that industry does, we're going to do differently. So that industry, for years and years and years and years, is talking about speeds and feeds. And they're talking about 697 megahertz and 4 megabytes of RAM or gigabytes of RAM, whatever it is. And Apple just said, it works. And what they did was they said, you want to be creative, this machine makes you creative. And they simplified. They were compelling, and they never lied. Yeah.
5.24 Interview with an advertising executive. Looking at language. 1.
You know, what do they call them? Earworms.
2.
They get in your head and you can't get them out sometimes.
3.
And I bet you I'm getting this word for word, if you could find it.
4.
We do live in a celebrity culture, and people, their ears perk up when they see a celebrity.
5,
Have billboards and TV commercials have their day.
6,
Because you got a captive audience.
7,
They became kind of the gold standard, and they rarely hit a false note.
5.25. On the street.
Do you think you're influenced by advertising campaigns?
Most definitely.
Is there any product that shouldn't be advertised, in your opinion?
Alcohol and junk food to children.
Why should those ads be banned?
Because it's promoting something that's unhealthy, and that, especially junk food to children, when they see it, they're very susceptible to the adverts, and then they want it immediately. And it's a problem.
Do you think you're influenced by advertising campaigns?
I'm sure I am. Probably not consciously, but I'm sure subconsciously.
Is there any product that shouldn't be advertised, in your opinion? Why should those ads be banned?
I mean, I don't care for cigarette ads or alcohol ads, but should they be should they not be advertised? That's not a decision I should make, so I don't think so.
Do you think you're influenced by advertising campaigns?
I'm not very influenced by ad campaigns. I'm influenced by reviews.
Is there any product that shouldn't be advertised, in your opinion? Why should those ads be banned?
The only thing that comes to mind that should be banned from advertisement is I think they tend to use the female body inappropriately to sell things and items. That's pretty much the only thing that I could think of.
Do you think you're influenced by advertising campaigns?
I think that everyone is somewhat influenced by advertising campaigns, even on a minor level.
Is there any product that shouldn't be advertised, in your opinion? Why should those ads be banned?
Perhaps cigarettes shouldn't be advertised because children probably shouldn't be seeing them advertised in a cool or exciting manner.
Do you think you're influenced by advertising campaigns?
I think a lot of people are usually influenced, a little by advertisement, especially because there's so much advertisement on media, and we watch a lot of TV, internet. I try not to be. I try to research the product on my own using internet or whatnot, and try to choose the best product, not because of the advertisement.
Is there any product that shouldn't be advertised, in your opinion? Why should those ads be banned?
Advertisements for cigarettes, I think, should be banned. I don't think there's anything positive about cigarette smoking, so I think that anything that causes health issues or bad influences or addiction should be banned from being on commercials.
5.26. Colloquial English phrases. 1,
When they see it, they're very susceptible to the adverts, and then they want it immediately. And it's a problem.
2,
I'm sure I am. Probably not consciously, but I'm sure subconsciously.
3,
The only thing that comes to mind that should be banned from advertisement is
4,
that's pretty much the only thing that I could think of.
5,
So I think that anything that causes health issues or bad influences or addiction should be banned from being on commercials.
5.27.
Let's start with the first one about the coin. Many people think that a coin dropped from the top of the Empire State Building, for example, would be traveling so fast that if it hit a person on the ground, it would kill them. However, this just isn't true. Coins are not aerodynamic, and they are also relatively small and light, so although a person on the ground would certainly feel the impact, the coin wouldn't kill them. It wouldn't even hurt them very much. Number 2 is one of the most popular scientific myths, that we only use 10% of our brains. Maybe this is because people would like to think that they could be much more intelligent if they were able to find a way to use the other 90%. In fact, neurologists haven't been able to find any area of our brains that isn't being used for something. Number 3, The Dark Side of the Moon. Well, that only exists as the title of a Pink Floyd album. People used to think that there was a side of the moon that was always dark, that never got the sun. But of course, that isn't true. The sun illuminates every part of the moon at some point during the 24-hour cycle. It is true that there's a side of the moon that we never see. That's to say, we always see the same side of the moon, but the other side isn't always dark. Now, number 4, the one about rubber tires. A lot of people think that rubber tires on a car will protect you from lightning in the same way that wearing rubber shoes will protect you from an electric shock. Well, it's certainly true that if you're caught in a thunderstorm, it's much safer to be inside a car than outside. But the tires have nothing to do with it. When lightning strikes a car, it's actually the car's metal body that protects the passengers. It acts as a conductor and passes the electrical current right down to the ground. Number 5, poor old Einstein. Over the years, he's often been used as an example to show that you can do very badly at school and still be very successful in life. And people have actually said that he wasn't very good at math or science. But in fact, records show that the young Albert, as you would expect, got very good grades in math and science. Number 6, antibiotics don't kill viruses. No, they don't. And it's a waste of time taking them if you have a virus. Antibiotics help your body to kill bacteria, not viruses. What's more, you can't exactly kill a virus at all since a virus is not really alive to begin with. Stick to your doctor's advice and only take antibiotics when he or she specifically prescribes them. The problem is that it's often very hard for a doctor to know if you're suffering from a virus or from a bacterial infection. Number 7, I love the idea that a full moon can make people go crazy, but I think this is only true for werewolves. For centuries, nearly all cultures have attributed special mystical powers to the full moon, and in fact, the English word lunatic, which can be used to describe a crazy person, comes from the word lunar, which means to do with the moon. But in spite of a lot of scientific research, nobody has found any link at all between the full moon and insanity or crime. And finally, number 8, are bats really blind? Most English-speaking people probably think that they are, because we have the expression in English, as blind as a bat, but it's just not true. In fact, bats can see just as well as humans, even if they don't depend on their sight in the same way. Like dogs, bats rely heavily on other senses like hearing and smell. They have a very advanced sound-based system called echolocation, which allows them to know where they are when they're flying at night. But they can certainly see.
5.28
Scientist. Scientific. Science.
Chemist. Chemical. Chemistry.
Biologist. Biological. Biology.
Physicist. Physical. Physics.
Geneticist. Genetic. Genetics.
5.29 1.
Scientists carry out experiments in a laboratory.
2.
Archimedes made an important discovery in his bathtub.
3.
Isaac Newton's experiments proved his theory that gravity existed.
4.
Before a pharmaceutical company can sell new drugs, they have to do tests to make sure they are safe.
5.
Scientists have to do a lot of research into the possible side effects of new drugs.
6.
People can volunteer to be guinea pigs in clinical trials.
5.30.
Anesthetic.
Nitrogen.
Blood transfusion.
Donors.
Malaria.
Tuberculosis.
Lead.
Additive.
Polio.
Nuclear.
Lethal dose.
5.31. 1.
All animals need food. All fruit contains sugar.
All the animals in this zoo look sad. The animals all look sad.
2.
Everybody is here. Everything is very expensive.
3.
Most people live in cities.
Most of the people in this class are women.
4.
All of us work hard, and most of us come to class every week.
5.
Every room has a bathroom. I work every Saturday.
5.32. 1.
Is there any milk?
Sorry, there's no milk. There isn't any.
2.
Is there any food?
No, none. There's none. But none of us are hungry.
3.
Come any weekend. Anyone can come.
5.33. 1.
Both Pierre and Marie Curie were scientists. Neither Pierre nor Marie was aware of the dangers of radiation. Marie Curie wanted to study either physics or mathematics. In the end, she studied both at the Sorbonne in Paris.
2.
She and her husband both won Nobel Prizes. Pierre and Marie were both interested in radium.
3.
Neither of them realized how dangerous radium was.
5.34. 1.
In direct current, the electrons move in only one direction.
2.
Helium gas can be found in both liquid and solid form.
3.
Adult giraffes remain standing all day.
4.
Of all the water on our planet, hardly any of it is found underground.
5.
Snakes eat either other animals or eggs.
6.
A diamond can be destroyed only by intense heat.
7.
The human brain can continue to live without oxygen for about 6 minutes.
8.
In our solar system, Pluto is no longer considered to be a planet.
9.
When we breathe out, some of that air is oxygen.
10.
An individual blood cell makes a whole circuit of the body in about 60 seconds.
5.35.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
5.36.
When Neil Armstrong became the first man to walk on the moon on July 20th, 1969, a global audience of 500 million people was watching and listening. As he climbed down the steps from the spacecraft and stepped onto the moon, they heard him say, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." It seemed like the perfect quote for such a momentous occasion. But from the moment he said it, people have argued about whether Armstrong got his lines wrong and made a mistake. James, tell us about it.
Well, Armstrong always said that he wrote those words himself, which became some of the most famous and memorable words in history, during the time between landing on the moon and actually stepping out of the capsule onto the moon.
Oh.
That was almost 7 hours.
And so, what is the controversy about what Armstrong said when he stepped down the ladder onto the moon?
The question is, did he say one small step for man or one small step for a man? That's to say, did he use the indefinite article or not? It's just a little word, but there's a big difference in meaning. Armstrong always insisted that he wrote one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Of course, this would have been a meaningful sentence. If you say a man, then it clearly means that this was one small step for an individual man, that is, himself, but one giant leap for mankind. That's to say, men and women in general. But what everybody actually heard was one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, with no indefinite article. And that sentence means one small step for people in general, one giant leap for people in general. And that doesn't really make sense.
So, did he just get the line wrong when he said it?
Well, Armstrong himself was never sure if he actually said what he wrote. In his biography, First Man, he told the author, James Hansen, "I must admit that it doesn't sound like the word is there. On the other hand, certainly the was intended because that's the only way it makes sense." He always regretted that there had been so much confusion about it, but almost 4 decades later, Armstrong was proved to be right. Peter Shan Ford, an Australian computer expert, used very high-tech sound techniques to analyze his sentence, and he discovered that the was said by Armstrong. It's just that he said it so quickly that you couldn't hear it on the recording that was broadcast to the world on July 20th, 1969.
Was Armstrong relieved to hear this?
Yes, he was. I think it meant a lot to him to know that he didn't make a mistake.
5.37. 1.
My neighbor just bought a dog. The dog is an English bulldog.
He got into the car and drove to the courthouse.
2.
Men are taller than women on average.
I don't like sports or classical music.
I stayed at home last weekend.
5.38.
My son is in high school.
They're building a new high school in my town.
He was sent to prison for 2 years.
My grandmother used to work in the prison as a nurse.
5.39. 1.
South Korea is in East Asia.
2.
Macy's is one of the most famous department stores in the U.S.
3.
Lake Maracaibo and Lake Titicaca are both in South America.
4.
The Danube River flows into the Black Sea.
5.
The Metropolitan Museum is located on Fifth Avenue in New York.
5.40. 1. Emmeline Pankhurst.
I have been in audiences where I have seen men smile when they heard the words hunger strike. And yet I think there are very few men today who would be prepared to adopt a hunger strike for any cause. It is only people who feel an intolerable sense of oppression who would adopt a means of that kind. Well, our women decided to terminate those unjust sentences at the earliest possible moment by the terrible means of the hunger strike. It means you refuse food until you are at death's door, and then the authorities have to choose between letting you die and letting you go. Human life for us is sacred, but we say If any life is to be sacrificed, it shall be ours. We won't do it ourselves, but we will put the enemy in the position where they will have to choose between giving us freedom or giving us death.
Two. Winston Churchill.
We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
3. Nelson Mandela.
I have cherished the idea of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die.
4. Barack Obama.
We know the battle ahead will be long, but always remember that no matter what obstacles stand in our way, nothing can stand in the way of the power of millions of voices calling for change. We have been told we cannot do this by a chorus of cynics, and they will only grow louder and more dissonant in the weeks and months to come. We've been asked to pause for a reality check. We've been warned against offering the people of this nation false hope. But in the unlikely story that is America, there has never been anything false about hope. For when we have faced down impossible odds, when we've been told we're not ready, or that we shouldn't try, or that we can't, generations of Americans have responded with a simple creed that sums up the spirit of a people. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
5.41. 1.
I was doing a tour of Asia where I was giving a presentation about database programs. I assumed the audiences would understand English. The organizers knew that I couldn't speak Chinese, and I knew they would be familiar with the technical language of the products I was going to talk about, which were DBase and Clipper. Well, for most of the tour, the talk seemed to go extremely well. There were big audiences, and the venues were great. The questions I was asked by the audience at the end of the talk showed that everyone had really understood what I was saying. When we arrived in the penultimate city, whose name I'm not going to mention, I started my session as I usually did, with a few questions to get to know something about the audience. So first I asked them, how many of you use DBase? I raised my own hand, because I use it myself, and pretty much the whole audience raised their hands. So then I asked, how many of you here use Clipper? And, once again, pretty much 100% of the audience raised their hands. This was extremely unusual. In fact, almost impossible. With a sinking feeling, I then asked, how many of you want to be an astronaut? And I watched as everyone's hands went up. I might as well have been speaking to a group of aliens. As it turned out, most of the audience spoke Chinese, and only Chinese. But I could see that 2 or 3 people in the audience spoke English because they were practically rolling on the floor laughing.
2.
I was giving a talk in Hungary to a group of about 200 English teachers. I got to the place where I was giving the talk a little bit late, only about 10 minutes before I was supposed to start. I rushed to the room and saw that everything was set up and most of the audience was already waiting, and I told the organizers that I just needed to quickly go to the bathroom, and then I would start. They pointed me in the right direction, but when I got to the bathroom, I saw that there were 2 doors with words on them in Hungarian, but no signs. I looked at the words and decided that one of them must be the men's room, and I went in and went into a cubicle. Suddenly, I heard voices of other people coming in, but to my horror, they were women's voices, and I realized that I had guessed wrongly and had gone into the women's room. I guessed that these women must be teachers coming to my talk, so there was no way I could open the door and come out. I waited and waited, getting more and more stressed by the minute and worrying about being late to start my talk. After about 5 minutes or so, everything went quiet, and I was able to rush out and go back to the room where the audience was waiting for me to start, as it was already 5 minutes after the start time. Thank goodness nobody saw me.
3.
My first ever presentation was at a conference for English teachers around 1988. I wanted to show the audience some good ideas for using video in the classroom. I explained one of the ideas, and then I went to turn on the video player, and nothing happened. And then again, nothing, and again. By this time, I was so stressed and annoyed that in the end I said, "Okay, if it doesn't work this time, I'm leaving." And I really meant it. Amazingly, almost as if it had heard me, it worked. I never forgot that talk, and it taught me to never rely 100% on technology in a presentation.
4.
Some years ago, I had to do a presentation to a group of construction workers about health and safety at work. When I was getting dressed that morning, I put on a silk skirt, and as I was fastening it, the button at the waist broke. I didn't bother to change because the skirt had a zipper, and anyway, I was in a hurry. During the presentation, as I walked backward and forward across the stage, I started to feel something silky hit the back of my ankles. My skirt was falling down. The audience was absolutely entranced, and not by what I was saying. I quickly pulled it up and said, "Now that I have your attention." The audience roared with laughter, and one of them shouted out, "I thought that was part of your presentation." I felt terribly embarrassed, and I could hear my mother's voice in my ear saying, "You should always wear nice underwear in case you are ever in an accident." I managed to finish my presentation, and I rushed outside and started to shake. That audience may never remember a thing I said, but I'm sure they won't forget me.
5.42. B.
Salt and pepper.
Peanut butter and jelly.
Bread and butter.
Thunder and lightning.
Knife and fork.
Bed and breakfast.
Peace and quiet.
Backward and forward.
C.
Right or wrong.
Now or never.
More or less.
Sooner or later.
All or nothing.
Once or twice.
Dead or alive.
5.43.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming. I'm going to talk to you today about one of my hobbies, collecting adult comics. Since I was a child, I've been crazy about comics and comic books. I started reading Spider-Man and Superman when I was 7 or 8. Later, when I was a teenager, some friends at school introduced me to manga, which are Japanese comics. I've been collecting them now for about 5 years, And I'm also learning to draw them.
5.45. A short movie on digital design.
My name is Austin. I am the co-founder of 3D NYC Lab, which is a digital design and fabrication studio based in Brooklyn, New York. We design things, we make things, and we help other people with an idea realize that idea into a physical, tangible thing. Sometimes an individual or a hobbyist or an entrepreneur or designer in New York might come to us and have an idea for something and not know how to actually make it. So what we would do is help by putting that in the computer and then using a technology like 3D printing to make that into a real thing. Definitely the use cases in 3D printing you're seeing everywhere, from not only the design world but to artists and sculptors. The great thing about 3D printing is that you can make incredibly complex things that would be really expensive or difficult to do otherwise. And the other reason is more people have access to tools that allow them to be inventors or designers. Every idea starts as a digital design in the computer. What the computer is going to do is take that and slice it horizontally, layer by layer, in tiny, tiny layers. And what the printer will do is build one layer at a time. So do one, maybe move 0.5 millimeter up, and then do another one. And then the end process, you end up with a finished object. I think that there could be really exciting things in the future of integrating electric connectivity into the materials, so we might be able to print electronics next. Beyond that, what you're going to see is an overall improvement in all the different aspects that aren't perfect about it now, which I think the prints will get faster, and the machines will get cheaper, and then the quality will rise. What really excites me about the future of 3D printing is actually younger and younger students becoming very skilled at the digital design tools. So what that means is if printers are more available, that anyone can become a designer and anyone can become an inventor. So it's possible that, some student tinkering around in his garage with a 3D printer can invent the next light bulb or the next great invention.